For myself and Sarah, remaining unnoticed is such a crucial part of our street photography for us. You know, if the people in our photographs are aware of our presence, we wouldn't get the unguarded gestures, we wouldn't get the expressions that we want, and we wouldn't get the layers or juxtapositions within our compositions. We approach the idea of staying invisible from two almost completely different viewpoints, and in this video I'm going to take a look at these different approaches and give you some tips and ideas which might help you to become more unobtrusive on the street. Now, they say opposites attract, and when it comes to our personalities, Sarah and I are almost complete opposites. We're so different. Sarah is very much an extrovert, and I'm very much, believe it or not, an introvert. As a result, we have two completely different methods of staying invisible when shooting, if we can use the word invisible, and our different personalities have really shaped how we approach this. Now, practically the easiest way to stay unnoticed would be to use a long telephoto lens and stand a long way away from the subject and, you know, just take photographs. But we like to make the viewer feel part of the scene rather than just looking at the scene, so we both use wide angle lenses. Unfortunately, these demand that we have to get really close to our subjects, which in turn makes it that much harder for us to remain unnoticed. As an introvert, I want to be that person that you don't give a second glance to as I walk past you on a busy street. Everything that I do is designed to make me go completely unnoticed. I want to be almost invisible. And I've been constantly working on strategies and approaches and techniques to help me to do this. And to this day, I've never been stopped or approached or had any kind of negative reaction from the public. Now, my main strategy is to work quickly. I'm always on the move. I rarely break stride, and the majority of my work is shot from the hip. It's a very reactive way of shooting, and it relies a lot on instinct because I've got nothing structured or planned within the frame before I actually see a photo happen. I've no desire to stand on a street corner and wait for a figure to walk into a shaft of light. You know, those images for me generally don't do anything for me. They don't say anything about the people in them, and people are the primary reason why I go out onto the street and take photographs. Now, one of the things I really like to do is work within crowds and follow a flow of people up and down the street. It's much easier to do in large towns and cities where people are always on the move and there are a lot of people about. The general idea is that if you walk up a street with the normal pedestrian flow of traffic, effectively within a group of people walking towards you in the opposite direction, the people that you want to photograph, won't notice you amongst all the faces that are in front of them. You are effectively camouflaged by the group of people you are walking with. Now, in smaller towns or places where there aren't large groups of people walking up and down the street, what I like to do is find somewhere to sit down and shoot from a bench or seat. You know, cafe tables are a great place to do this. You know, sit outside a cafe. The fact that you're sitting down and relaxing doesn't draw attention to you, and you can get some really interesting images from the lower camera angle. Now, camera technique is really important for me to stay unnoticed, and shooting from the hip without looking through the viewfinder has become the quickest and most natural way for me to take photographs. The technique has become so familiar to me now that I would really struggle to take street photographs any other way. Now, some people think shooting from the hip is just looking down at a flippy screen. It isn't, at least not for me anyway. It's about taking photographs without looking through the camera at all. I'm concentrating solely on what's happening in front of me, around me, and even behind me. I want to photograph whatever I see without being noticed, so being distracted by a screen isn't something that I really want to do. One of the most important techniques that I employ is to shoot one-handed. Most people don't react to somebody with a camera, they react to somebody they think is going to take their photograph. Now, how can they tell this? How can they tell if they're going to be photographed? Well, if you're walking down the street holding both hands on a camera and kind of pointing it in their direction, that often gives the game away. You know, if you can shoot one-handed and bring the camera in and out and move it quickly and put it into position quickly and take the photograph and take it away again, most people won't realize what is happening. Using one hand to hold the camera also relaxes your body language. If you hold a camera with two hands, even if you aren't going to press the shutter, this tenses up the shoulders and puts your arms into an unnatural position, especially if you're walking while doing this. And this draws attention. And it's often the body language that creates problems for photographers, not necessarily the camera. Now, when I'm shooting this way, I'll always wear my camera strap around my wrist. I just wrap it around like this, and everything is nice and secure. And because I rarely look through the camera, I tend to use zone focusing and set the aperture and shutter speed manually. Now my shutter speed has to be high enough to freeze movement because generally speaking I'm in motion and my subjects are in motion when I press the shutter. Therefore I tend to typically work at around 500th of a second. But if I was using a camera with a larger sensor, say a 60 megapixel sensor, I would be pushing that to at least 1,000th of a second.
Wicked, absolutely wicked.
Now Sarah is the extrovert in our relationship, and even though sometimes she will see a photograph and she'll take it very quickly and walk past, sometimes she'll want to stay with the scene and see what happens. To go unnoticed, she has to hide in plain sight. She has to become part of the scene and blend in. Now Sarah's really happy to talk to people, and that might sound a little counterintuitive given that we're trying to remain unnoticed, but one of the ways of staying unnoticed is to make people relax around you so they don't pay you any attention. Many years ago, Henri Cartier-Bresson was commissioned to take a portrait. Now, my apologies, I can't remember who the sitter was. I should really go and look it up, but Bresson was sitting with this guy, and he was having a cup of tea or coffee, whatever, and he was chatting to him. And after a while, the sitter asked Bresson where he would like to take the portrait. And Bresson told him that he'd already taken the portrait while they were chatting. Bresson was effectively working while hiding in plain sight, and it's a really powerful technique, but it does help a little bit if you are a little bit more outgoing. I mean, I would really struggle to do this technique. When you watch Sarah take photographs, you see how important body language is to her. She's always open, she's always non-threatening, she's always calm, something which is often reflected in her work. It's the small things that she does that amaze me. You know, I've often seen her walking along the beach close to the water's edge. She's got her trousers rolled up to her knees and she's walking barefoot. You know, she's enjoying the sea, just like the people she is photographing. She also exudes confidence in her work. You know, whenever she's photographed, she never hesitates. And in our experience, photographers who lack confidence, photographers who hesitate, they always send out the wrong signals, often drawing attention to themselves. If you're going to try and hide in plain sight, avoid photographing situations that genuinely make you feel uncomfortable. For a lot of photographers, photographing kids on a beach is a common situation which they can't kind of handle. And that's absolutely fine. Not everybody can do that. But to try and do that will just make you look uneasy. It will make you look uncomfortable. It will make you look nervous, and this will show in your body language. Now, in certain situations, a nervous photographer lacking confidence can look almost creepy to some people. If ultimately you do want to photograph situations which currently make you feel uncomfortable, then try and build up to them over a period of time. Now, another way that Sarah remains unnoticed is that she prefers to use just one camera and one lens. If you know your camera and lens backwards, everything is faster and more fluid during the picture taking process. You don't think about the equipment at all, and Sarah's used the same camera and lens for the past decade. If you're bumbling around with your gear while trying to hide in plain sight, you will draw attention to yourself. People will wonder what you're doing. Now, before people mention the famous clip of Gary Winogrand shooting while he's hiding in plain sight, his camouflage was to take on the persona of a bumbling amateur. He was obviously very fast. He would take a photograph and then he would kind of bumble around fiddling with the lens and fiddling with the shutter dial, and almost as if he didn't know what he was doing. And the idea was to leave enough doubt in the minds of the people he was photographing for it not to become a problem. Today, I'm not sure that would work. I think looking like you know what you're doing and not hiding anything would work better than trying to pretend you aren't taking photographs in that situation, you know, in my opinion. Ultimately, Winogrand demonstrates that everybody is different when it comes to staying unnoticed on the street. I'm really curious to know if you have any ideas or techniques when it comes to staying unnoticed. Let me know in the comments. Anyway, until next time, hope you enjoyed the video. Take care, and I'll see you soon.